In this video, I'll explain how you can make a custom Bible study layout and optimize it for the way that you work. I'll give you some tips and tricks about how to do so, and the tips and tricks that I'll share with you hopefully will be useful not only for Bible study, but for other topics as well. To get started, let's open up and start with the default Bible passage study layout that Verbum offers us. To do so, go to the command bar. Let's open it up to Luke 22:14-20, the Last Supper in the Gospel of Luke. And choose the option Open Passage Study Layout to Luke 22:14-20. Verbum opens up this layout that we're already familiar with the passage guide on the left, my top 3 Bibles in the center top, my top commentary in the center lower section, and on the right, the information pane, which can give me information about different words. I'm going to go ahead and collapse the taskbar here to give us a little bit more room. The first tip that I'd like to share with you are some tips and tricks about how you can position resources the best way possible to get the most out of your layout. The first thing I notice, for example, here in this layout is that I don't have as much space for my commentary as I would like. And the great thing with Verbum is that if that is the case, you don't have to just leave it that way. You can move things around. So let's go ahead and move the Gospel of Luke here by Luke Timothy Johnson up next to our passage guide. And I think this is a great place for it because when I'm using the passage guide, I'm normally not going to be using at the same time the commentary or vice versa. When I'm using the commentary, I'm not normally going to be using the passage guide. So I can hide one behind the other. And when I'm using one, I'm not seeing the other, but that's okay. I don't need to see them at the same time. And now I have more than enough space to see the commentary. Apart from moving tiles around on the screen, I can also, if I hover my mouse over any of the dividers, I can move them around and give the resources on one side or the other more or less space. And don't be afraid to play around with this. If you ever want to get back to the way things were at the beginning, simply hover your mouse over the divider and double click, and Verbum will bring things right back to the default in the center. Another tip about positioning that can sometimes be useful is that you can float a panel. So let's say I open up, I click here on a word, say kingdom, and I want to open up a Bible dictionary about that. So I open up the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament to this article about basileos, or kingdom in Greek. And I'd like to see this a little bit bigger, or maybe I'd like to move it to a secondary monitor. How can I do that? Well, to do so, simply right-click on the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament tab up here. And there's an option here to open in a floating window. And when I do so, Verbum opens up this window that I can now move around. I can easily also full screen it. As you can see here, I can even have multiple tabs if I want to in this secondary window. And I can use this together with my main layout. And if I save this eventually as a layout, the secondary window will also be saved, even if it's on a different monitor. So this can be a great way to take advantage if you have more than one monitor, or if you simply want to see a resource full screen quickly. Go ahead and open that up in a floating panel, and then you can full screen it. I'm just going to close this for now. So the first tip is about positioning. Position things the way that you like them. The second tip that I'd like to share with you is that you can have multiple copies of the same Bible, and sometimes that will be very useful for you. Let me show you why. Here I am studying the Lord's Supper in the Gospel of Luke, and if I advance here to verse 17, notice how in verse 17, Jesus blesses a cup and gives it to the apostles. And then he breaks the bread and he says, "This is my body." And then in verse 20, he blesses a second cup, saying that this is the cup that is poured out for you, that is the new covenant in my blood. Why does St. Luke have 2 different cups? That's very strange. Now, the commentary here that I have from Luke Timothy Johnson explains that in the ancient Passover meal, according to Mishnah Pesharim 10, there are 4 cups of wine at the Passover, and Luke is reporting 2 of these 4 cups. So that's really helpful for me to understand this. Notice here that Luke Timothy Johnson points me towards chapter 14, 22, 23. If I click on this link to try to read the institution narrative in the Gospel of Mark, notice what happens to my Bible and my commentary. I click on this, and my main Bible navigates away from the passage that I'm studying in Luke to the Gospel of Mark, and the commentary that I had, which was on the Gospel of Luke, is now the commentary on the Gospel of Mark by John Donahue and Daniel Harrington. So a completely different commentary, but Verbum navigated it because it's in the same series, and my commentary and my Bible are in the same link set. How can I avoid this? Because what I would really like here is to be able to read that passage, but without messing up where my main Bible is and where my commentary is. Well, let's see how this is very easy to do with Verbum. I'm going to head back here, click the back button on the Bible to go back to Luke 22:17. And I want you to right-click on your Bible and choose the option Duplicate. This will create a second Bible, a second copy of the same Bible. And I'm just going to drag this down here so we can see more easily what's happening. And what I want you to do is go ahead and click on the Resource Panel menu, which is these three dots here on the upper right, and choose the option Send Hyperlinks here. When I do so, notice that next to the title of the Bible, the English Standard Catholic Edition, there is a bullseye or a target that appears. And what this means is that whenever I click on a link, those links are going to go straight to this Bible right here. So let's give this a try. Now if I come back to the Gospel of Luke commentary by Luke Timothy Johnson and click on the link to Mark 14, my secondary Bible, the English Standard Catholic Edition Bible, navigates, but my main Bible stays at Luke 22, and so does my commentary. So this is a really useful tip if you are studying with commentaries and you'd like to explore secondary references or in cross-references in the passage guide. Keep your main Bible where it is and have a second Bible with send hyperlinks here. So that's the second tip that I wanted to share with you. The third tip that I wanted to share with you is how you can economize the number of tabs that you have open. Some tips about that. Notice here, for example, that I have 3 Bibles open. And this can be great to have lots of Bibles open to compare translations or multiple editions. Notice here, for example, in verse 20, where Jesus says, this cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood. And if I come over here to the New American Bible and I compare the translation there, here it says, this cup is the new covenant in my blood, which will be shed for you. And there's no language of pouring out. So that is very interesting to see the differences in the translation, but I had to switch tabs to do that. Is there an easier way? And the answer is yes, there is. A couple different options here. If I click on the word poured out in the information pane, Verbum offers me a panel here called Translation. And notice here that while the RSV, the LEB, and the ESV, and the NRSV all use poured out, in the NAB-RE, I can see here that this is translated, which will be shed. So this is one way to compare translations. Simply hover or click on the word, depending on how you have the information panel configured. And you can always change that here in the resource panel menu of the information pane. Simply choose click or hover, depending on how you'd like to have that work. But there is also another way that you can compare translations. The information pane is one. Another way is simply click in the verse and type the F7 key on your keyboard. And what Verbum is going to do is Verbum will pull up your top 5 translations and compare them for you. On the left will be your top translation, your top edition of the Bible, whatever that is in this moment, whatever you have open. And then Verbum will give you your next 4 high prioritized Bibles. So notice here that in the NAB, we can see that I have crossed out the text from the ESV, that poured out for you is, and then below that I have in blue, which will be shed for you, the text which the NAB adds. We had seen earlier in the passage guide how in the figurative language section, how this is an example of figurative language in this text, where Jesus says in the original Greek that this cup will be poured out. And it's an image that Jesus is using about how he will be killed. He will die. And we see here how the NAB has a more dynamic translation, but that loses this figurative or metaphorical language that can offer a lot of richness to our interpretation. So I love how Verbum helps me to easily see these different options. But notice here that with these two tools, I may not need to have multiple Bible translations open. So I'm going to simply close these, the RSV, and I'm going to close the NAB as well, knowing that I can quickly compare translations with the information tool or with F7. Let me give you a third way that you can quickly move back and forth between different Bible editions. On the resource panel of the Bible, you'll see two bars that are slanted slightly. And if you hover over that, Verbum says that this is parallel resource sets. Go ahead and click on that, and notice what you'll get is a drop-down list with all of the Bibles that you have in your library organized according to the priority that you have set them in your library. And check out the library video about that if you haven't yet. It's very important to prioritize the resources in the order that you like. And you can quickly choose and switch between different resources that have the text from Luke 20 to 20 in this case. So here I switch to the RSV. Now I can switch to the NAB. And now I can go quickly back to the ESV. This is something that works great, by the way, with commentaries. We can come over here to the commentary from Sacra Pagina, and we could quickly switch over to the Anchor Bible commentary or the Navarre commentary or any other commentary that we have in our library. And it also works with theological dictionaries. Here I just opened up the Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, and here I can switch to a different theological dictionary. It works with Bible dictionaries, like the Anchor Yale Bible Dictionary or the Catholic Bible Dictionary. You can quickly switch between them. So this is great to keep in mind when you create a layout. You may want to have lots of commentaries open or lots of Bible dictionaries open because you like all of them and you want to have access to all of them, and it can quickly clutter up your screen. But you don't necessarily need to have all of them open. You can use parallel resources to economize the space on your screen and quickly move between them. So that's one tip that you're going to want to keep in mind. Fourth tip that I'd like to share with you is to make sure that you have the tools that you use configured the way that you like. We already saw how you can configure the information tool to either hover or click. And there's similar options for other tools in Verbum. For example, if I come over here to the passage guide, notice here in the upper right that there is an option to add. And here I can add different sections that I may want to use in my passage guide. Maybe I'm a fan of textual critical studies and I would like to add apparatuses. Or maybe I would like to study passages in relationship to the church magisterium. I could come here, for example, to confessional documents. When I do so, I can then, it will appear on the bottom of the passage guide. And if I open this up, what I'm going to see is a list here of, I'll go over to the resource menu here and expand this out, a list of the different books in my library where there's been a confessional document about this passage, about the Eucharist. So I can see what the Council of Trent had to say about the Last Supper or the Eucharist. Or maybe I would want to look at Vatican II or the sources of Catholic dogma. All of this is just organized right there for me. And if I ever want to remove a section that I have added to the passage guide, I can always do so with this X here. You can also change the order of the different sections. So here I have, for example, the Catholic Topical Index, and it's pretty far down. I'm going to go ahead and move that up. Maybe I would like to access this more easily. I can move this up to right before the Atlas, for example. And now when I open up my passage guide, Catholic Topical Index will be there right at the top more easily for me to access. So feel free to customize these with the tools that you use, like the passage guide or the information tool. The changes that you make will be saved and will be then displayed in whenever you open these tools up. So keep that in mind. But you may want to go ahead and try to customize those and make them work the way that you want to work. So once you have your layout set up the way that you like it, let's save it, and I'll give you a tip or two about how to use it and keep it updated. To save it, you can come here to the Layouts menu and choose the option Save as Named Layout. So let's just call this My Bible Passage Layout. And it will appear here now under your saved layouts. You can collapse the Quick Start and the homepage layouts if you're not using those as much. And now I can see this here. And when I close all, I can come back to this layout at any time just by choosing it from the Layouts menu. Now, a quick tip about this, because you may want to access this layout a lot. And if that's the case, I highly suggest that you come to the Layouts menu and simply drag it over to your shortcut bar right here and just drop it there. And a shortcut will appear to this layout. If I expand my menu here, notice that Verbum has included my name, My Bible Passage Layout. And if I want to change that name, I can right click on this here and give it a special label that will appear here on the shortcut bar. I can also change the image. So here there's a basic image of a layout, but maybe I'd like to give it a special image, say a dark blue Bible, for example, to help me to easily remember that this is the Bible passage layout study. And now, again, if I close all, I can simply come here and open that up, and it will open right back up. Now, as you use your layouts, you're going to find that over time, you're going to have different needs. You're going to find some improvements that you want to make for them. Say, for example, that here I add a second commentary. Maybe I add the Anchor Yale Bible commentary and add this as well to link set A. And now I'd like to make this my default Bible passage or my default layout. Well, I can come back here to Layouts, make sure everything is the way that you want it, and just hover over My Bible Passage Layout and choose the drop down here and Update. You want to just update to current snapshot. And now when I come back to that layout, I will have both of those commentaries present as well. So I invite you to go ahead and try to think about what are the layouts that you might like to make. Here we've made a Bible passage layout, but you can make any type of layout that you like. The important thing is that Verbum is working for you the way that you want. Have fun.